the California Rental Agreement. In this video, we will tell you about the most noteworthy aspects of rental agreements in the state of California. What is a rental agreement? A rental agreement, or a lease, is a document that outlines the arrangement between two parties regarding a property rental. The one who's paying rent is called a tenant, while the owner of the property, who lets the other party use it under certain conditions, is called a landlord. The parties may also be called a lessor and lessee. Typically, a rental agreement lasts for 6 or 12 months, with rent being paid every month or every week. There is one federal disclosure that works for all lease agreements in the United States. This is called the lead disclosure, and it requires the landlord to tell the tenant about all known lead paint hazards. They should also provide the state-approved version of the pamphlet, Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home. However, this requirement applies to not all types of residential dwellings. Required disclosures. Apart from the above-mentioned disclosure, there is also a list of other information the landlord should include in a rental agreement according to the California law. First, asbestos disclosure for buildings built before 1979 with landlord knowledge of asbestos in the property. Second, methamphetamine contamination disclosure for properties where the landlord has knowledge of, suspicion of methamphetamine production, use, or storage. Third, mold disclosure for properties with known mold that may pose a health threat. Fourth, sex offender registry notice. Fifth, demolition permit disclosure for units with planned demolition during the lease term. Sixth, death in a rental unit disclosure for any property where a material death has occurred in the past 3 years, excluding HIV or AIDS-related death. Pest control disclosure for units with pest control schedule or who use pesticides for infestations. Shared utility arrangement disclosure for all units that share a meter with another unit or another location. And finally, bed bug disclosure. Security deposits. In the state of California, the maximal security deposit cannot exceed 2 months' rent for unfurnished dwellings and 3 months' rent for furnished dwellings. The deposit shall be returned by the landlord along with written notice sent by mail within 21 days after the termination of the tenancy and delivery of possession. If any damage is caused to the premises, the landlord can use the deposit to pay unpaid rent and to repair any property damages caused by the tenant. Then the itemized list of withholdings is needed. If the landlord fails to mail the security deposit or an itemized list within the set period, the tenant can receive up to twice the amount of the security deposit in addition to actual damages. Landlord Access. In the state of California, a 24-hour notice of intention needs to be sent to the tenant before entering the apartment to inspect it, make necessary repairs, etc. Termination of agreement. For termination of a month-to-month lease, at least a 30-day written notice is required. It can be written by either party. For termination of a week-to-week lease, at least a 30-day written notice is required by the landlord. The tenant is required to give at least a 7-day notice. Notice periods for non-payment and non-compliance. If the tenant fails to pay the rent or violates other terms of the lease, the landlord should send at least a 3-day written notice to pay or remedy the violation or quit.